Because I know
Uh,
many of
I
you
know
are.
I would finish it. I would finish it much earlier, but my cousin was here and she's stuck due to all the flights cancellation. She's stuck here, so I couldn't even read it because I have to entertain her. And
Mhm.
I could read like one article per day or something.
Yeah, it's a lot of content. I know. And it's fine. You can. It was never meant to be like you have to do it in a week or anything. It's more tailored to people who are busy working on other stuff and want to educate themselves about that, and on the way get some feedback from us. That was more what FLair is about, but I will tap into that in a second. um I think we're nearly there. Sorry, it's not corona. I have this cough for forever. Ross, haven't you been in the call last week?
Yes, I was there.
Okay. Yeah, for those of you who have been in the call last week, this will be very much an overlap. So the idea is actually to give an entry point to what are startup ecosystems, how do they operate. It is not meant to be that we have certain stages of in-depth knowledge. We plan to do that next week to have a follow-up call, but more for community builders. And for us, for you, that will be relevant as well. There we will tap into what are community organizations, how to run community organizations, and things like this. But this will be similar to last one, just a couple of updated slides. So you can tune in, you can eat something on the side. It's not going to be too heavy content for you, probably.
Okay,
All
I
right.
understand.
Let's start. Kaha, you're also here. That's good. Let me just see how many we have. 20 people. That's a good size. All right. So what we will do today, I tried to do it in, last time it was a bit over an hour. I tried to stick to that, but probably it will be 1 hour 20, something like that, that we have still some Q&A in between. If you have any questions, anything I say doesn't make sense to you, please interrupt me, unmute yourself, or write me in the chat that I know that you have something on your mind. Yeah, let me start. So what we are going to cover today is, first of all, learning what is a startup. I try to explain that in a very basic way. Then later on, what are the different stages from our own interpretation? What is a startup ecosystem? And then we will dive into all of the single players that make a startup ecosystem an ecosystem. So incubators, accelerators, investors, corporate innovation, government, community organizations, service providers, and universities. And then later on, how you can get involved. And at the end, I will explain about FLair Academy, if any of you wants to go through that or not, especially for those of you who want to become a volunteer for Startup Grind Beijing. This is relevant because we currently have linked that to, we need to have a level 0 certification to get in, just as an update there. All right. So for those of you who do not know me yet, I'm Jelte. I'm from Germany, in China for roughly 8 years. I come from management and strategy consulting. I studied Chinese and economics in Germany. Currently, I am founder of FLair. We have a team. The team slide will be shown at the end, but you also get to know us. I'm currently director for Greater China at Startup Grind, doing that as a volunteer, supervising there roughly with university, probably 30 chapters in 24 cities. And before I've been the Beijing director for Startup Grind here, started that 3 years ago. We became one of the most active chapters in the world out of 600. And at one point, I just stepped up a bit and supported other chapters. And by that, I became the Greater China director. So I know my part about the differences of startup ecosystems within China, what's different between a Shanghai and a Beijing and a Shenzhen and a Kunming. I know what things are easy, what things are hard. If you want to start community building there or not. If you have any specific questions about this, you can also ask me afterwards in PM. The one job that pays me right now is I'm senior manager at Innoway, and I'm head of community at the lab. So this is a state-owned enterprise that belongs to the Haidian and Beijing government. Currently, I'm focusing on the international part of corporate innovation. So we are serving large companies like Volkswagen and Daimler and Walmart and stuff like this, and helping them with innovation and cooperation with startups. And my role as head of community at Innowe is I advise the Haidian and Zhongguancun government on aspects how to internationalize better their strategy, so how to be more foreign friendly. So all is a bit aligned, and yeah, the last thing, which is a smaller role, is I'm chief evangelist at German Innovators, which is a community organization that focuses on exchange between Germany and China, and everybody who's coming from the innovation space, entrepreneurs, investors, so on and so on. If you want to connect to me on LinkedIn, please just Google my name, Yelta, you should find me there. Okay. Why are we doing this? During my time as a community builder, I realized that people are facing different problems. Especially from the community organization perspective, most community builders have the problem of not having enough volunteers and then quality volunteers. You always, of course, need volunteers who do stuff like registration, opening beers, welcoming people. But usually what you want is you want to have people who really get involved and want to participate, make an impact with your organization. And this filter process is usually quite inefficient because everybody is a volunteer. They do not have the time or experience to really differentiate between somebody who wants to join because of the fun and the beer and the food, or somebody who wants to join who is really interested in the topic of community building and startups. And I did the training already for Startup Grind chapter directors quite for a while. What you need to do to build a community, how you get involved, how you do the right events, how you build a team, stuff like this. And we just wanted to help them to build a pipeline of pre-vetted volunteers. That means what we do is so if you're interested in joining any kind of community organization, we would make sure that you learn the basics, and we certify that you know your stuff about how a startup ecosystem works and how you can contribute to that. With that, we kind of filter out the people who say, yes, I want, but they do not really take the time to read the stuff and to really want to make an impact. Later on in the material of FLair Academy, we can see from your replies if you really mean it or not. And the people who really mean it, we will introduce you to Startup Grind, Startup Weekend, anything else that you are interested in if you want to get into hackathon organizations. And we make sure you get in, and that, or you can start your own organization. So community organizations have this problem, and we will support them with volunteer training. We also will secure them a knowledge base, because one thing that I realized is once you have a community organization in a city, that heavily depends on the quality of this community organization heavily depends on the leadership quality of the director or whoever is in charge. And one thing that I also realized is these people have a big network and knowledge about their ecosystem. But when these people leave and they hand over, this knowledge base gets lost. And usually they have no CRM system or anything where they keep their insights and everything. And that's also where Founders Lair should step in, where we secure the knowledge about venues, investors, startups, so on and so on, and can hand over to a new director or a new person in charge, that there is no loss of insights. And again, we want to increase the volunteer pipeline and the quality there. Individuals usually have a problem of not finding their way in, so they do not know, where do I start? What is really worth my time? What are good organizations? What are not? How can I make an impact? Because I really want to. And this is something where we want to guide you around. So if you're not part of any community organization yet, we want to give you a training about first understanding what is a startup ecosystem, what are the different community organizations that you can be part of, and how you can get involved. This is where we want to help you. And then last but not least, and actually most important part, are the startups. because we realized that it's very hard to get reliable information to plug into new startup ecosystems. So if you're a startup from Beijing and you want to go to Chongqing or Seoul or I don't know, Phnom Penh, any international part, it's quite hard to find your way in. And this is something that we try to change, and that you can use one platform to actually get from A to B, no matter where you go. And I'll explain in the later part how we actually plan to do this. Because I'm not sure if you ever faced that. If you're a community builder, some of you are, and you try to get into another city, and even as a community builder, it's sometimes hard to find your way in. So if you're going to Shanghai, how do you tap into the local startup ecosystem? You reach out either to your network, but if that's not working, where do you get reliable information from? Maybe LinkedIn, Google, or whatever, but then getting really an answer is sometimes hard. And this is where we want to get in. Personally, I got affected by this a lot. Also, I mentioned that last week. I wanted to tap into last time Tokyo in Japan or Phnom Penh. And I always believe Startup Grind is the right platform to do this, because we are all community builders, community organizations, and you will get insights and a network, friends everywhere in the world, because we're in 600 cities globally, 125 countries. So I thought that must be a leverage. But in both chapters, I did not get a reply. So even me as China director, leading so many cities, I did not find my way into Tokyo or Phnom Penh. And this frustrated me, because I always thought we should be helpful. One of our guidelines is helping others, making friends stuff. But even here, we are not living up to our values. And this is where we want to get in, that you don't have to rely only on your own community organization. You can rely on a network, and we can help you to find your way in. Okay, that's enough for that. Any questions so far about that? I just drink a bit of coffee inside. I make these pauses after every slide that you have time to ask me anything.
Hi, Yelta. So this entire ecosystem that you're building, is it going to be centered around Startup Grind, Startup Weekend, and around that particular this thing itself? Or is it going, because I'm very sure that other countries might have some startup ecosystems, but they don't have to be Startup Grind in particular. Am I making sense?
So we've done part of our research already globally on different cities and ecosystems. Startup Grind does not always play a very important role in all the cities. So there are very functioning ecosystems in cities without having a Startup Grind, a Startup Weekend, or anything in place. And usually they are mapped quite well. But the thing is, they're only welcoming or easy to tap into if you're part of this and you're localized there. If you're from the outside and you want to tap in, you don't know anybody, it's quite hard. And we want to kind of build a network where you can tap into these highly localized ecosystems or highly internationalized ecosystems, both ways. And this is something that my team is working on. It will make more sense probably way at the end. If you have more questions about that, we can also talk in private or in the group later on. Okay?
Understood. Thank you.
Cool. All right. So far, we have 42 participants. I did not check this morning, so it might be that there are more. With participants, I mean, when you scan the right flyer, there is a QR code, and it will lead you to the Airtable, and you will register to get the reading material. These are currently the people that have registered, 42 participants from a very wide variety of countries. And this is what we are proud of, because we do not want to be only focusing on Beijing or China. We want to help both the people here on the ground, but also in their home country. So that if you want to go next time to Germany, any city, we can open up the doors. And we want to follow up with each of these individuals, helping them to understand their own ecosystem and providing them with information and insights. So we are planning to have this as a global system and you can tap in wherever. So this 42 participants are already on the right track, and I'm very much looking forward to get involved with all of you, because this is already a good sign. One thing is, and this is going to be explained more in the Founders Layer Academy, the FLair Academy details, you only get a certificate if you pass like through all the steps, but this will be explained in the end. Any questions here? No. All right. So even for those of you who know startups, startup communities, or are startups, you very often get the question like, what is a startup? I sometimes get stuck in this definition because it's a very vague definition, and a lot of people will say a lot of stuff. Most of it is true, but it's a fuzzy term. Wait a second, I got a message. I should add Russia to the chart. I will do after this call. All right. So it's a quite fuzzy term. Some people think it's only like individuals. Some people think it's something like a Meituan or a Facebook is a startup. But there is such a wide range in between this, and we try to explain to you what's true and what's not. What is really a startup and what's not. This one are a couple of terms that I got from an article. I can share that later on with you. I will also share the slides with you that you can read it. So these are not my own kind of interpretations. It's from What is a Startup Company Anyway, Emma McGowan. It's a really good article that describes all of these things. So you will hear a startup is lean and adaptive. That's true for smaller ones. That's not true for bigger ones. So if you're looking at a Zoom, something like this, it's still a startup kind of. And it's not true for them that they're lean and adaptive anymore, or Facebook. It's home for the crazy ones, definitely, but that usually describes the earlier stages. It's solving a problem, yes, but so are business consultancies. A job you can't live without. This is something I think makes a lot of sense, because you get, so if you're an entrepreneur yourself, at one point you will get hooked by this problem or idea, and you want to follow up with it. You want to achieve it. And if you're in this situation and you're trapped and you just really, really want to do this, then you're becoming an entrepreneur. But at one point, do you know that you're a startup? For me, certain things are true that I think are important. You need to have a certain team size. You need to register your company. If you do not have like a team of 3 people or something like this, you're not a startup. If you have not registered your company, you're not a startup yet. If you're not growing, growth is probably one of the most important factors for what is a startup. So you must be focused on growth. If you're not, you become a business. So if you're for 5 years the same size and you have the same revenue, you're usually a business. If you're one person, you're a freelancer. I don't want to linger too long on this slide. You can read through it. And I want to tap into the next one, which most people think are startups. So that's more the theoretical framework, where startups come from, what path they go through. It's based on the funding stages of startups. So everybody has heard about an A round or B round or C round or angel round startup. That's also very abstract. Nobody can use anything of that, because what does it mean? In different countries, you have different funding levels. You will have a seed round, which is 1 million in that country, 5 million in another. It's very unclear what that means. And if you have no clue about what startups are, these graphs will confuse you a lot. Still, so if you're reading through the material later on, this is still accurate. This is already much deeper than we will go today. But I wanted to explain in a much easier way what actually startups are and how they got to be startups. If you have any questions later on about value of death, IPO, seed capital, angels, later stage, early stage, mezzanine, whatever, you can also ask me. But we're not going to tap too much into that. I have another. Will you kindly share the PPT? Yes, as I just said, I'm going to share that later on. Value of death, keep that in mind. That is a very important term. If you're a startup, you should find yourself at one point in this valley of death where you're just desperate and nothing is going as planned. All right, but so I try to make that a bit simpler. There is like no revenue on the y-axis. It's more about like excitement of entrepreneurship. So if you're this one person and you have the idea of or a problem that you want to solve, this is usually where the beginning of a startup starts. So you're soon to be founder. And this time, you usually start thinking about, okay, this is really a problem. How do I make it a business? So you start thinking about, how do I write a business plan? How do I get people? How do I register my company? Things like this. These are the soon-to-be people. This is usually neglected from most people from a startup ecosystem and people who are professionals, because they usually start with early stage startups. So they think, so very often I realize that people believe startups just emerge from out of thin air. So, oh, there is an Aeron startup. That's cool. Or, oh, this one is seed funded. But this is neglecting the pain and suffering that a lot of people went through in the stage of a soon-to-be founder. And this is a bit where FLair wants to make a difference, because we want to clarify the funnel between a soon-to-be founder and an early stage. So we want to support the community organizations that are helping actually individuals getting from a soon-to-be to an early stage. And this is neglected a lot. I hope this makes clear after the call why we're doing this, because everybody, if you're looking at a Crunchbase or something like this, they usually start at early stage because everything before is impossible for them to map, because they're not interacting enough with the community organizations. So in this curve, usually the excitement stops once you start really thinking about what is a business, what's your business model, how do you set up things. This already starts demotivating people, and you get into this valley of death at one point that was shown in the graph before. People drop out, people lose their money, people are not following up. Those people who still follow up, but they are a one-man show and they start making revenue in this point, these are usually freelancers. So there must be another curve that goes out here. Do you see my cursor, by the way? I'm not sure if you see that. So this is another line where freelancers are. But if you're getting a team together and you start just a way of struggling through, like, how do we survive another month? How do we raise investment and stuff like this? Then you're in early stage. We also do use the terms of what funding round you're in, but we try to make it in a more comprehensive way for people to understand this without having any background in investment. In the early stage, most of the startups die. So you cannot say that people that are soon to be founders end up in a dead startup, because that's usually not happening. Either you mean it or you don't. If you mean it, you enter the early stage and the valley of death, and then you die, or you become a business, or you're one of the lucky few that actually got the potential to grow. And these are the ones where most people are focusing their resources on. So the end of early stage to growth. So these are the startups A+, all the corporates want to talk to them, all the investors wants to talk to them. But for us, the most focus, as I said, should be on soon to be and early stage. Later on, if you exit, if you're capable of selling your company or anything, then you go IPO. But also this, from my point of view, is not really a startup anymore. But when you talk to a lot of people, even in the industry, people will use for businesses still the term startup. So when they have a 10-year-old consulting firm and they say, I'm a founder of this, they still think they're a startup. That's why I want to show you this graph, because a lot of people are not really sure about it themselves, what they are. And if you're doing your business for 10 years and you're stable, it's a business. It's not a startup anymore. From my point of view, the core definition of a startup is what I said, the early stage and the growth. The soon to be startup is not a startup yet, but it has the potential to go there. IPOs are not a startup yet, not a startup anymore. That are not startups anymore, but they usually be recycled to get back to the soon to be or the early stage. This is a life cycle that most people also neglect. So everybody who died in the process usually do not drop out entirely. They join other teams and then they become serial entrepreneurs or anything like this. Anybody has questions about this graph? Nope. Right. This graph we will show in all the future. So we'll go through each of the steps of a startup ecosystem. And you see on the top left side as a reminder these stages. Why I want to do this is that you think about at any stage, who are these ecosystem players actually serving? Is it the soon to be? Is it the early stage? Is it the growth? Is it the death or anything like this? This becomes quite relevant when you're looking at startup ecosystems. But more about this in a second. So a startup ecosystem is a quite large term. I like to believe that a startup ecosystem is what serves a startup. So you see in the center the little rocket, that's the startup. And this startup can be either soon to be, early stage, growth, IPO, debt, or a business. And these players around, so you have investors, incubators, accelerators, corporate innovation, government, community organizations, service providers, and universities are the ones serving the startups. And that's why it's an ecosystem. It's an ecosystem for startups and thus a startup ecosystem. Each of the players has different layers, different subcategories. And this is what we will tap into right now. We do this in a clockwise version. First of all, investors. Everybody thinks like investors are most important for the startup ecosystem. But when you look again at the graph and you think about where the process begins with the soon-to-be founders, all of the players that are mentioned here in the investor stage are usually not relevant for anybody who is a soon-to-be founder. But most soon-to-be founders believe they need investors. And this is something that I want you to remember, that there is a misalignment of information and expectations. So you need to make sure that people understand this when you talk to them. So here the subcategories, I'm not sure if you can see that clearly. Most commonly known are like a venture capital firm, investment banks, hedge fund, private equity, corporate VC, venture debt, angels. I will not go into all the details of what they do because that would take us like 2 hours as such. But if you read through all of these things, most of them are actually focusing on later stage, especially hedge funds and private equity investment banks. They're usually focusing on the growth stage. So they're irrelevant for anything very, very early. There are only a handful of players out there that are focusing on individuals and serial entrepreneurs and invest seed or angel rounds very, very early. But to get into this is very hard, and it's only open usually for serial entrepreneurs. So people who have already been successful, raised money, and when they go and say, I want to start a new company as an individual, these people will get investment. But you as a first-time founder will usually not get any investment in this stage. Then you have things that are more related to universities. So this definition of the subcategories of each of the ecosystem players was something that we worked on after 3 to 4 months of mapping international ecosystems. So this is not based on like some 1 hour drawing on the pages. It's more like we mapped ecosystems and we looked what's out there. And why we have a certain lap over of university being mentioned in investors or venture builders, which are usually corporates, also in investors, is we wanted to have this framework as a way that people can use it how they identify themselves within an ecosystem. So if you talk to a venture builder from a corporate, they would say, I'm an investor. I'm not a corporate innovation. And that's why we wanted to have it here, that they can find themselves in this quite similar, quite easy. And universities, if you're in Beijing and you have like a Tsinghua accelerator or anything, it might be depending on who you're talking to that they think either they're an investor or they're a university or they are a community organization. And this framework should help them that they can find themselves easy in each of these bubbles. Any questions about the investors? Nope. Okay. So incubators and accelerators. This is actually one of the largest, most important sections of a startup ecosystem. So you should know who are top incubators or accelerators in your town. If you do not know, this is something where we come in and we help you actually to identify them. We help you to figure out which of them are focusing on certain industries or technologies. So if you're looking for IoT or AI, we can help you with that. Also here again, you see university incubators, maker spaces, co-working space, virtual accelerator, virtual incubator. Look again at the graph. Most of the players here that I mentioned are not focusing on the early stage, the soon-to-be founders. The only one that will probably welcome soon-to-be founders are university incubators and accelerators, and probably co-working spaces. Co-working spaces because they offer very basic support in terms of you can have a desk, and that's it. And the interesting part is very often there is a misconception about what people are. So if you're talking to a co-working space like WeWork, they would think they're an incubator themselves, but an incubator is a very broad concept, and they are not the same as a Y Combinator or anything like this, where you get mentorship and anything like this. So you should know this, the differentiation between the subcategories. The co-working spaces, usually you just get a desk, but they always like to say, hey, I'm an incubator. But we want to help you with the insights about who is really an incubator with a mentorship program or with the resources to invest or anything like this, and who's just a co-working space, because that is a misconception very often. And even in Startup Grind Beijing, a lot of people do not know the difference between all the subcategories, and they say like, oh yeah, I know I don't want to drop any names. I know this and this player. I know they're an incubator, but at the end, it's just a co-working space. So we want to educate you about what the differences are. But still, even if they're a co-working space, they belong into incubators and accelerators. You can also interrupt me if you see a term that you do not know about, and I can tell you about what it is. Any questions about incubators and accelerators? No, okay. So corporate innovation. One of the examples that I want to give, and I gave that last week as well, is I work in corporate innovation. I work with a lot of Fortune 500s. And one example was I was working with Nestle 2 years ago, and they said they want to work with startups. Usually, they have experience, and they tell us like, we want to have this in this round. But in this case, they did not. So I created a proposal, and I created some materials, and we talked about things. And I said like, here, these are the startups that we can introduce you. These are the technology trends that are happening. But at the end, what they said like, we're not interested in this. We want to talk to Meituan. But they insisted on, we want to have a startup program. And this is what I mean is you need to be very, very careful about what people actually talk about when they mention startups. That can mean something very, very different. Another example, also from my work, is Skoda, which is part of Volkswagen Group. we also started an annual program where they wanted to work with startups, and we created a pipeline for them. We started scouting mobility as a service startups, but at one point we realized that they're not looking for established startups like A-Round or B-Round because they were too small to actually handle these startups. They were looking for soon-to-be people to potentially hire them or to work with them on creating POCs. And so you need to clarify if you're in this realm, like who do you want to serve? Who can you serve? And who do you want to work with? And that's why, again, try to keep this framework in mind. Is it a soon to be? Is it a early stage growth or any of the others? There are not too many players for corporate innovation. Very often it's like a marketing department or anything that wants to work with startups to look more innovative or anything like this. That is usually under corporate innovation department. The more established players have a corporate incubator or corporate accelerator, and the very established ones have a corporate VC. These people working there usually have also the experience of what's the difference of players, but still be cautious about that. I have another chat point. You said the Skoda company is interested in working with soon to be to hire them or create POC or something. What's that? It's a POC, proof of concept. So proof of concept is somebody has a great idea or a problem to solve that's relevant to a corporate. So in the case of Skoda, it's about mobility. And they're usually having hackathons where people can bring in ideas to solve problems. And then they want to continue working with the teams to build a proof of concept. The proof of concept is you have to code something, you have to build something, and you have to prove it with clients so that there is a demand for something like this. That's a proof of concept. You will find this on the Y Combinator reading materials as well. So please look into that. That's already very much into the topic of startups. But a POC is something or MVP, a minimum viable product, where you can use it already. So these are the terminologies that you will hear more often. All right. Coming to governments. I'll try to bring that on the other side. Governments are relevant for startups, but there are different types of governments. So you have, for example, innovation hubs. So if you're from France, you have Station F. These are initiatives that are run by the government, and they support usually any stage of startup. In Beijing, you have InnoWay, for example, or IMWay, two different streets where they have hubs to attract you. Then you have different plans from governments, regional, provincial, or country governments where you get grants for startups. And they usually want to work with startups, but they do not know very often who they want to attract and how they are capable to attract them. So this is where a lot of lost in translation happens. And we also, as founders there, want to support the governments a bit more on understanding what the target audience is. Chambers of Commerce is also mentioned in here. You see more and more that the Chambers of Commerce are developing educational tours, or they want to bring startups from A to B. So one example is the German Chamber of Commerce. They try to get Chinese startups to Germany to serve corporate clients. This is a way how Chambers of Commerce are getting involved. It's also the other way around, that they are now trying to do more demo days or competitions and things like this. That's why they're getting more and more relevant. Anything else important there? Government R&D centers, those are important for those who are working on heavy R&D focused concepts or problems. In China, for example, if you want to set up a R&D center, you should know, and we know from FLair, that cities like Nanjing are more beneficial than cities like Beijing, because you get a lot of grants to set up a company there. And that's where we can help with providing you with the right knowledge. Any questions regarding governments? Okay. Community organizations. This is my realm. And there are also different types. And from all the ecosystem players that you see here on this donut chart, these are the ones that actually take most care of the soon-to-be founders to become early-stage founders. But the problem is all of them are very disconnected and disorganized. And people forget how much power, knowledge, and data they have. And that's where we want to get in, that we actually help them to align their strategy, to align their data, their knowledge, that they get more recognition. All of the other players that you see here are usually focusing early stage or growth. Nobody's working on the pipeline from the beginning. That is usually done by community organizations. A startup weekend, for example, helps you to understand how you get a team, how you build a business plan, how you pitch your idea. A startup grind helps you also to understand how you can start your journey. You learn from other entrepreneurs, so it's more an educative platform. Hackathon organizations will help you to, similar to a startup weekend, but a bit more tech savvy, to get your hands dirty and build teams to build a POC or anything like this. Female empowerment, it's not about like building a big startup or anything like that, but providing you with the right tools to grow, to be a leader and things like this, so that you can become entrepreneurship material. And this is why FLair Academy is focusing so much on community organizations, because we want to help them educate their volunteers a bit better to benefit from ecosystem knowledge, that we help them to identify who are the right players out there, the investors and incubators and governments to talk to, that they can better leverage on information. And one more thing, we also want to save community organizations from a lot of pain and suffering that you can go through if you do not know your part about ecosystem players and their focuses. So it could be, for example, that a corporate innovation department would come to Startup Weekend and say, can you please scout for us some IoT startups in Shanghai? And it sounds often very tempting. And in China, most of the directors usually get these offers from time to time, that they get these scouting offers or anything like this. They get 50 or 100,000 RMB of sponsorship, potential sponsorship in these contracts. But the problem is, if this is out of your area of expertise, you will only suffer because you cannot deliver. You cannot do the job. You don't have the expertise to actually scout for the startups or develop a pipeline. And this is something where this framework can help you. It can help you to understand if you're talking to the right people or not. Because if you're a startup weekend, you should know what startup stage you're serving. And you're serving soon-to-be founders, nothing else. And if another player comes to you and their corporate innovation department, and they are heavily into growth stage startups, you cannot talk to each other because you do not know each other. They work on different stuff than you. They are much deeper into the juice than you. And this is something where people should learn better about themselves and about others, that there is not this problem coming up of committing to something that you cannot deliver. There are certain community organizations that are also serving later stage startups. You have an entrepreneurship organization, which is kind of a chamber of commerce for startups. There will be like later. Do we have any questions regarding community organizations? No? Okay. Service providers. there you will find a lot of waste of time of people. You will have accounting firms approaching early stage startups, soon to be startups, and trying to sell their stuff. This is something where you also need to be careful about. Community organizations will get a lot of sponsorship opportunities from these players, but you should know like what's relevant and what's not. All of these players will serve a certain stage of a startup in a certain point of time. So you will not need a financial advisor when you have a good idea. You need a financial advisor when you are stuck in A round and you need to get to B round, and they will go out and talk to a couple of investors. That's when you need a financial advisor. Consultants is nothing that you need when you're a one-man show. Consultants are something when you have the money and you can pay for it. Company setup is something that you could need, and you should know in your city who's doing that well, who has the experience of doing that. Everybody says they can do it, but then you should know like what would you recommend a startup. So if you're a startup weekend and they're doing a good project, and they come to you like, I want to register my company, then you can of course say like, here's a PwC or an Ernst & Young. But that's crazy. I mean, paying 100 times the money for setting up a company when you can go only to a local service provider who's done that 1,000 times with startups, where you pay like just a fraction of that. This is what you need to know. You need to know like who are the good service providers and who are not. And this is where I want the community organizations to learn better of how to identify the right service providers to recommend to startups that are approaching you in your pipeline. One special thing is innovation service providers. If you have a plug and play and they do like a demo day for corporate, like Volkswagen, they are not corporate innovation. They are an innovation service provider to the corporates. So what they do is they have the client, the corporate, and you, the startup, are the product to sell to them. And this is where you find the service provider, innovation service provider. They are quite relevant also for later stage startups. So it's good to know your plug and play or your innovate when you're growing. Then coming to universities. Universities are usually very often neglected or forgotten in the startup world. But if you have a good incubator or accelerator linked to a university, this can be a major pipeline for creating new startups. And one thing also how we use this entire ecosystem framework that you're looking at right now is when we map an ecosystem and we talk to governments, we identify where are the weak spots of your ecosystem. So we tell them like, you do not have enough IP or trademark service providers. So if you have a good startup, they will face a problem of registering the IP because you have no experts in your market. Or it could be that we identify you have not enough angel investors there, so you have a lag in the pipeline. Or we will identify that there is no incubator accelerator that's worth spending your time on. So with these frameworks, we can very quickly see where is a lack of resources and help the city to improve this. Also, as a community organization, to activate players which are there, but they do not know yet that they can actually serve startups. So coming back to universities, very often, if you're not in the capital of a country, so if you're in a Tianjin or a Chongqing or anything like this in China, the universities do not have a good entrepreneurship program. And I think this is a mistake because students should have the awareness of what an alternative to a standard career at a consultancy or a bank or anything like this is, that they can also go another way. A good example for that are most of the ecosystems in Germany. So you have in Munich or in Aachen, for those of you who know the German cities, a very, very heavy arm and focus on university entrepreneurship programs. They're really, really good. And this is something what a Tianjin or Chongqing can learn. because you get talent, you get mentors, you get usually IP support, you get technology insights, experts and everything, all from university. And usually this is free. So if you're going out to plug and play, it's not free. You have to pay in one way or another. But universities are really great in terms of creating a good ecosystem. But the problem is, if you have these university players and they have a good incubator, a student incubator accelerator, they're usually very to themselves. So if you're not part of the university, you cannot tap into the resources. And for the community organizations, there's a job to kind of open them up and that other people can join into this as well. So where we see community organizations and community builders is kind of getting a full picture of who's out there, who has good resources, activating them and making them available for other people to tap into. And with that, you can better create a pipeline of soon-to-be founders to early-stage founders. And this is what we are about. We want to help with FLair Academy to increase this pipeline, raising awareness of what needs to be there in an ecosystem and how you can activate them. Any questions so far about the ecosystem?
I think we've learned that all the ecosystems, I mean, the players play an individual and distinct roles. But can there be a one player that can help a startup can actually play all the roles? Like, can we have one player that can play all the roles, for example, from soon to be to growth stage?
The short answer is no. No player has the knowledge of, so when you're starting, usually you need to know how you build a business plan, how you pitch, what's relevant, what's not in the early stages. That kind of knowledge is completely different to when you're a B-round startup and you're an IoT health tech company, and you need to know how you open up or how you do R&D to tap into the markets of Siemens or anything like this. Nobody has the expertise from A to B, from building a business plan to entering a market in a very specific tech-heavy area. And this is why not one single player can do this. A lot of people want to claim that. They say, yeah, we are like a one-hand only service provider, but nobody can do that. Everybody's usually focusing on one or two areas, but not more. Unless you can show me that, I have never seen anything like this.
No, I'm just asking. I want to know.
Yeah. Oh, it's just a hi. Okay. Yeah, but the thing is, it's a good point because there are a lot of people out there who in the consulting area, and they say like, yeah, I can solve all of your problems. But that's not the case, especially if you're capable of growing at one point. Your mentorship and growth demands will shift towards other areas. So you need to learn about how you become a good manager, how you become financially savvy, how you develop your product in R&D in terms of increasing the quality and things like this. This will come later stage. And again, nobody can handle all of this, even us. And in a way, I'm not an expert in any industry. I'm more like a generalist. I know the people who can further take over and mentor you to get to the next stage of a startup development. There is a question, student organizations as mental health awareness, for example, can be succeed startup. Student organizations as mental health awareness, for example, can be succeed startup to make it globally in the community. I think I do not get that question. Manasseh, can you unmute yourself and explain that shortly? Because I didn't get that. No. Just write me afterwards because I'm not too sure. Mental health, it's a good point. This is something that that everybody should keep in mind, that startups are struggling with that a lot. I'm not sure if I have another picture where it shows the development graph of a startup, and where you have also the the mental instability that increases on time. So you will have an imposter syndrome, you will have fear of failure and stuff like this that will increase over time. So if you look at the bubbles here, the soon to be, they will have none of that. The the early stage startups, they will have some of that. And in between early stage and growth, you will have a lot of self-doubt and a lot of mental problems where also the community organizations can help to support that you do not crazy. Because one of the sad things about startups is still that the suicide rate and of people going crazy is extremely high. And this is why I think this is a very important thing for the community organizations to know at what point to support and how to support. Okay, I'm just gonna go forward. Just an example that you know how we currently use this framework. So for those of you who do not know Impact Hub, check out the player. It's really, really cool. The framework does not mean that you can only be one thing. You can be multiple things. So you can be an incubator and both a co-working space and a community organization, company, setup and entrepreneurship training, as you can see here. So you're an incubator, community organization, and a service provider. How we use that is we highlight then the centers. And with that, we know what this player is about and what they are not. They are, for example, not an investor. If you go to their website, you will find nowhere that they're in charge of investment. And again, if you're in Kuala Lumpur, there is an Impact Hub, for example, there. They're a great place for soon to be in early stage startups. And if you're a community builder in Kuala Lumpur and you have anybody coming to you and saying like, hey, I need an incubator or I need company setup services, you should know like, hey, the Impact Hub is the right player to go to, please go there. You should know that Impact Hub is not about government grants or corporate innovation or universities. And if you are using our framework and you're getting the data from us about your ecosystem, you will learn what players you can use for what, and you know what they are tapping into. And with that, you will sharpen your senses about who's actually there for what. Because in the last 3 years running Startup Grind, I have on a daily basis people coming to me and say like, hey, can you help me out? First thing that I try to do is I try to learn what stage are you at, what do you really need, and what do you not need. So if you're like a soon-to-be founder, and I have an example, like a German Israeli founder came to me and he said like, hey, I have this hardware startup, I want to prototype stuff. So I first thought about a makerspace. But I realized at one point that he's just a one-man show right now. He has an idea. He does not have the budget. So why should he go to a makerspace? What I did at the end, I introduced him to individuals who are hardware startups and help them to understand if what they're working on is actually feasible or not. Because if we send them directly to the service providers, the first thing that they want to do is close a deal and get them in, right? And this is where a lot of resources, money, is burned and a lot of frustration is coming from. Plug and play, you should know that. One of the top players. I have both the incubator and accelerator because they sometimes have corporate acceleration programs that they're running, like Startup Autobahn, not in China anymore, but the rest of the world. But in the other areas, they're more an incubator. They are an early stage VC firm, and they're an innovation service provider. They're nothing else. Sometimes they do provide services, for example, for governments that you have, they support with grants and things like this. But this is on an individual case differently sometimes. Very important in this area is the term incubator and accelerator, for example. It's a lot of people do not know themselves what is an incubator or what is an accelerator, and they will use the term without actually fitting into the criteria. And when you use our framework, you would know what the difference is between an incubator and an accelerator. And if somebody's specifically asking for an accelerator, you will know if this player is really one. Because an accelerator is usually something that should grow you in a very short time from a certain stage to a bigger stage, and it is not a long-term project. If it's a long-term project and you get mentorship and things like this involved, then it's an incubator. And this is a terminology that even in the market is sometimes misunderstood. In China, everybody calls themselves an incubator, but usually they are co-working spaces. So be careful with these terms and learn your theory. And there is a lot of content in the reading materials that we have provided in FLair Academy. I will wait here a bit. Any questions? No, because that's the last of the examples for startup ecosystems.
All right. So you said incubator is mostly for long time, and then accelerator for a short time. So how long is it short time, and how long is long time?
Well, there is no super clear definition. But I would say anything below 6 months is an accelerator, and everything above 6 months is an incubator. You will find acceleration camps which try to teach you in a week everything there is to know. But from my point of view, these are not acceleration programs. These are education or entrepreneurship trainings. And because an accelerator should grow you, it should accelerate you from one stage to another. If it does not accelerate you, it's not an accelerator. It just educates you. And that's the most common mistake that's happening. But that's where you have to learn about, like, are you looking really for an acceleration? Because acceleration usually comes with, you have to give away equity. Not all of them. Some of them are equity free. But if a startup is really looking for this, and that's the only way for them to survive or to grow, then introduce them to real acceleration programs and not entrepreneurship training programs, because that's also a waste of time.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, I have one question.
Yeah.
So for the startup companies who are not in their early stage, let's say they already have their presence, they already have their own products in China, and how does the ecosystem, like startup ecosystem, can help? I mean, from your experience, how this can just play their role to help them expand their business, or just help them, approach to their end users with the platform, like play an important role in a business part.
So I think the best, who should help them? Is it now the community organizations or?
Yeah, the community organization. Like if you want to stand up, if you want to build up this kind of ecosystem, like focusing on, helping them expand their business, extend to like end users. What's your advice?
So my advice is, first of all, know your stuff. If you're in Beijing, you should know who is relevant for what stage of startup and who's not, who's focusing on what technologies or not. There's a lot of bad advice out there and a lot of good one, but finding the ones and filtering like what's good and what's not, it's very hard, and it takes a lot of experience. Everybody wants to be like either supportive or they're like hiding the information for themselves. It's very, very hard to get through this jungle. But that's why we're giving this call, because we want to educate you more about who's out there and who's serving what level of startup. Once you can better make a judgment about these players are good for this level of startup or this industry or anything like this, you can make much better judgment on when to introduce a startup to this player and when not. But you can only know this if you can judge yourself if this is a soon-to-be founder, early stage growth, or anything else. And if they are asking for any of these players that are mentioned in this ecosystem and really mean it. So this takes experience talking to people and figuring out, are you a one-man show or are you already an established startup? If you are, what are you looking for? Do you understand what the difference is between an incubator or not? If you do, then I can introduce you to the right people. This is only about knowing your stuff, knowing your ecosystem well, and making everything more transparent. And one thing that we try to do here is making this information available for free. Because if you're looking at Crunchbase or any of these mapping institutions, they are monopolizing their knowledge. They want you to pay money to get to like figuring out who's a good incubator in this industry or that one. But I believe this information should be out there because the knowledge is actually with the community organizations. But it's fragmented, and we want to kind of collect this information. And once we have that for one city or ecosystem, we can provide it to any community organizations, and we can educate a lot of people at once that they can make much better judgments on when to recommend a startup to what kind of player. That's where we want to come in. I hope it did answer your question. So the what you can do is learn about your ecosystem, exchange with a lot of community organizations about who's out there, who's good and who's not, talking to startups, and then sharpening your senses about who are you talking to, what stage of startup is it, and then you can make an impact. Do not make standard introductions to anyone who comes to you and says like, oh, I'm looking for investors. You just say, go to YC. That doesn't help anybody because you need to understand who you're talking to, listen to them, understand the case, and then make the right call. Because it could be that they say, I need an investor, but what you need to tell them is get an entrepreneurship program. I hope that answered that.
Yeah, that answered the question. Thanks.
Oscar, is that AWS or?
No, it's just my personal,
Okay, I thought you're from AWS.
I'm from AWS, but the question is coming from like myself, like for my personal project.
Okay, cool.
Thanks.
So this was now a lot of fragments of information, and we want to tell you like how you can get involved. As you heard is we want you to listen, to understand. And the first most important thing is be a good person. So don't have, first of all, a business interest in mind, because we are looking for community people. We are looking for people who help and give first, not for people who want to improve their business. And if you're trying to really be a good person and support and help others in your community, I think this is already how you can make a really big difference, that you listen better, you learn better, and you help first, and you give first, and not hold back your information, because that doesn't help anybody. So if you know something good, just go out there and support them and share your knowledge. Then again, learn and educate yourself about the uniqueness of your city. I mentioned before, Aachen and Munich are more university driven, a lot of corporate innovation happening there. Us looking at hundreds of different ecosystems has taught us a lot about what cities, countries, ecosystems are about. Every ecosystem is different. If you go from a Singapore to a Beijing, from a Beijing to a Bangkok, you will find complete different dynamics. Sometimes the community organizations are the ones that are leading the ecosystem. Sometimes you will find corporates that are leading the ecosystem, sometimes investors. Learn about your own ecosystem by trying to educate about who's good there, who's the most supportive entity, and with that making an impact. Because when you educate, you take it your time, you will learn a lot, and your advice will get better. One thing that we will do, Founders Lair, and support you in the later development, if you want to make an impact in your city and you want to learn about your ecosystem, is we help you to gather this information. So we have a team that's mapping ecosystems, and we do this for you. But for that, you have to go through the academy. And then become a knowledge hub yourself. So share this knowledge. Do not enter or open up your own consulting firm and say like, hey, of course I take all the data from Founders Lair and then I'm going to sell that shit. We figured that out. So try to become like a hero and share that, and be a friend to others and become a knowledge hub. Yeah, so anybody who walks through the later stage training, you can become with us a knowledge hub of your cities. Then, as I said, FLair Academy is at this stage, so the level 0 certification is to open your doors to community organizations. If you are certified by us, we open you the doors to the community organizations. You can, of course, also do that yourself. Their channels work as well, but we introduce you in your city to the right players. And we also, if you're interested, educate you about certain community organizations that are not in your ecosystem yet and that could help the ecosystem itself. So very often you have no startup weekend, or you have no hackathon entities, or you have no female development. If you're sitting in a very like a city like Tianjin, there are a lot of community organizations which are not there yet, and we can help you to either tap into the existing ones or create a new one. Good advice is also start working for a startup. If you want to learn about what it takes to survive in an ecosystem, just get involved, get a job as a business development, sales, whatever, marketing person for any startup, early stage, and realize like how crazy and how tough it is. You will learn more than in any other regular job, and I can just recommend that. If you need help with that and you want to find a job for a startup, let me know and I can introduce you to some founders who are looking for people. Especially in these times with the coronavirus, there are a lot of startups who are struggling with things. Some of them are struggling with resources and money, but some of them are struggling with people. So let me know if you want to get involved. Then one thing is, if you're trapped in a city which has nothing to offer, no incubators, no community organization, nothing at all, let us know and we figure out how we can activate the right players from afar. And we can help you to build an ecosystem based on our framework. So we would talk to governments and we would talk to universities, to players on the ground where we think they have the potential to turn this around, and we can support you on this. So if you think this is like hopeless, it's like boring, or nothing is happening, let us know and we see what we can do to help you. That's how you can make an impact. Now coming a bit to FLair Academy, or does anybody have a question about the impact thingy? No? Okay. So how this currently works is this call accompanies you to this certification class. So the flyer that you see in the QR code leads you to an Airtable which walks you through the level 0 certification, which is the ecosystem basics. You read a lot, and I promise you, if you read through all the articles, you will know about startups, you will know about the difference between incubators and accelerators, about governments, much better probably than after this webinar, because it's much more in depth. But it takes a while. So it will, if you read every day one article, it probably takes you a month. It's nothing that you have to push through quickly, but if you want to get us to map the ecosystem for you or to provide you with the insights that we have, please go through this training and give us go through the different test stages. So the first one is the personal information. We want to learn where you're coming from and where you're currently based. I personally believe that foreigners in an ecosystem usually are doing a much better job as community builders as the locals on site. So I personally look for people who are foreign to the country and still want to get involved in the community, in the ecosystem locally, because they are strangers still to the culture, to the language, and they need to find their way in. And we are looking for these kind of people who are try to make an impact, but they're coming from another country. So if you're coming from India and you're sitting in Germany, we want to talk to you because you need these insights and you can make much better use of these insights to help others. Because we are all about international transparency and people traveling from A to B. This is why we're asking where you're currently located and where you are originally from. In the next step, the definition test, we just want to see in all of these 3 tests if you really mean it or not. If we write like, please give us 150 to 200 words, it means give us 150 to 200 words. You do not need to have it like completely accurate or anything. It should be your own words. We have enough, our team has enough experience to see the difference between somebody who's just playing us or somebody who really means it. And also, if we see certain answers that are in the wrong direction, usually we give you feedback about what's currently not right in your approach and how you can make it better. So far, not many people have gotten through the entire process. We have our first person in Zhuhai, Flora Shi, who got the first certificate, and she's also going to be our next director for Zhuhai for Startup Grind. I will share later on her case. I'm not sure if she's on the call, but she's the first one who got entirely through that. The mapping test also is important for us to see if you know something about the ecosystem. If you do not know anything, it's fine, but try to really stick to the guidelines. The motivation check, these colorful boxes that you see here on the bottom, this is important for us because we want to see what you care about and what you want to get involved in. We look at your ecosystem and we see who are the community organizations that are there. And if we see that there are not many there, we help you that you could start your own community organization in this realm, or we help you to tap into any of those that you are interested in. So if you're interested in coding, we will not introduce you to Startup Grind because we are not about coding, we're more about communities in general. If you're about female empowerment, we will not introduce you to Angel Hack because it's not about that, it's about something else. So please click these boxes and let us know. Feedback is always welcome. If you have any suggestions to improve things, let us know. Or if you think it's good, then also let us know. Yeah, so this is the entire course. If you have any problems with that, please let us know. Any questions about this?
So if you did a test and did not receive any feedback, what does it mean?
Dave, yeah. Your case, I looked into your results. First thing, you missed out the definition. And you tapped into the mapping test and the motivation check. And for you, one thing that you did not right is you did not stick to the word count. And when we ask for like 3 or 4 people, let's say, I think with the hero thingy, where is that? I don't know where that is right now, but it's something like, who do you think is worth calling a hero? Oh, that's the mapping test. Who do you think are the 5 most supportive people in your startup community who deserve the title community hero? You wrote my name. I'm flattered, but that's not about me trying to see that people praise me for doing something cool. It's really about knowing. You should have a certain network. You should know personally like who's really supportive, and we want to know who's supportive because once you share with us who's supportive, we can introduce startups or people who want to learn from people also to your network of supportive people. So we want to know who's cool out there, that we can grow our network of cool people, because that's the most important thing that you can do as a community organization, that you surround yourself with like-minded people. So for your case, Dave, please take your time to finish the definition and maybe put a bit more effort into the mapping and motivation check because the replies were too short. And then let me know when it's done and we can have a talk about that. I just saw from your replies that you did not read through all the materials. I see that very, very quickly. So just read through that stuff, get a basic knowledge, and then you can spend the time doing that whenever you feel ready. And then we are more than happy to follow up with you. Okay? It's not about like getting things done like super quickly. It's really about quality. We want you to learn something, and we want you to get involved with the right organizations.
All right. So if, for example, I'm just new to the system and I just know one person.
Yeah.
Is that cool? Like I just know one person who is helping the ecosystem. I just came to Beijing, for example.
Yeah. If that's the case, write that. So if you only know me, it's you can say you're new to the city. I only know you so far, and it's really helpful. I would like to get to learn more people, because then we know what we have to do to support you. I think in the point how we can help you, I think you wrote like all fine. So if you say you only know one person and you say, how can I help you? All fine. Just write there like, hey, I would like to grow my network. I would like to connect to more like-minded people and stuff like this. And then we do that. Just be transparent to us that we really see like you mean it. And then we support you. So just do that again. Take a bit of time whenever you're ready, either this weekend or next, or yeah, more than happy to help.
All right, thank you. Okay.
And also for you, we are preparing ourselves to map ecosystems. And I think you're from Ghana, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So for you, we did a test for Accra. We looked very much into Accra and the startup ecosystem there because we want to learn ourselves how quickly we can adapt to new markets. So we take this very, very serious, and we spend a lot of time and resources on learning about new ecosystems. We are preparing us already for you to get through this. So please let me know when you're ready, and we can continue there with you. Okay?
All right. All right.
Cool.
Thanks.
This slide is heavy, but just that you know where this is going. Starting from next week, we will also start giving training about community building in general. Because I'm giving this training to China directors from Startup Grind already, but I'm trying to neutralize a bit the content that anybody can learn about it, so that a female empowerment community manager can learn the same as the person who works for Startup Weekend. We start to give these online trainings that you can learn about the basics there. And there we go much more into detail. This community builder does not end into a certification. It's open for anyone who passed the ecosystem basics and any community builder. So we still will ask you like, which organization do you belong to, if you are a part of Startup Grind or not. If you are, then you can join these calls. This is really to improve the quality of the community organizations. If you want to tap into what we are mapping and all of these insights and data, then you can apply to step into the next ecosystem ambassador training. This is where we will pre-map your ecosystem and ideally that of your home country. And we give you this, and we look about what you will do with this data and insights. And then we will mentor you on a weekly basis to help you to grow. Later on, if you want to get actively involved, you have the chance to tap into as a lead ambassador. But so far, all of you are very, very far away from this. So that will probably take 2 or 3 months for any of you to get there. Just that you know that there are certain stages. We are also looking at the later stage for country ambassadors. And one positive thing that we can do is if you're part of a community organization at the ecosystem lead ambassador level, starting on that, we will start making resources available for your community organization or yourself as a community builder. So we are also working with larger companies. We're trying to activate sponsorships and things like this. Once you get into this level, we will put these sponsorships also in your reach. So you get money from that, you get resources and things like this. This is a long-term incentive that we wanted to create. But as I said, we're still a bit far away from that. Any questions about that?
Hey, Yelta, I have a question. I'm not sure if I missed that, but just want to confirm. So for the target audience, like if it's for the people who already had their own community and they want to scale it up, or like it's suitable for anyone like me, like I want to build up my own platform. I have an idea, but I don't have the way, the methodology to do that. Is it like for the first people, like the last one, or the latter one? Like just
it's both. So if you want to build your own community organizations, I'm really our company is really about helping you to get the basics right and see what can work out and what cannot. We can provide you, so if you want to create your own community organization, you pass your ecosystem basics certificate, for example, because you're not part of any community organization yet, what we will do is you can join the calls, and there we will tap into what makes a good speaker. How do you get venues? How do you make an impact as a community organization? How can you close sponsorships? How you leverage better on your network? Things like this. We will teach you about that. I do not care if you want to do that for your own or for a community organization, because at the end, FLair Academy is not that we become the community. What we want to be is we are the like an academy for community builders, and you have your own community organization in your city that you represent or you want to build. And we just give you the tools of your ecosystem and our knowledge that we share with anybody else as well. Again, I'm training right now around 40 or 50 community builders with Startup Grind China. This content is relevant for anyone. So I could train with that also Startup Weekend. So what we are trying just to do is make the knowledge of community building more available for anyone and neutralizing this. And you can either use that for your own organization, or if you want to join any organization, you can do that and still use the tools. So just let us know when you need help and what you have in mind. Also write that into the the motivation checky there, where you can say you want to build your own community organization focusing on this and this, and we help you with that. An example that I can give is, so you heard before in the beginning, I'm the kind of co-founder of the German Innovators, which is a regional community organization focusing on Germany and China. If you're, for example, I'm not sure where you're coming from, but if you're focusing on Cameroon or anything like this, and you want to, or Africa in general, or and you want to have a regional community organization, we help you to build it, and we help you to also become kind of like an accelerator for your community. We give you speakers, we give you resources, we train you on how to do marketing and stuff like this. This is where we help. This is what we're currently doing with the German Innovators. We're accelerating them with LATAM China, which is on Latin America and China, Slovakian Innovators. So if you're focusing on anything like this, we can help you with that.
Okay, thank you. So is there a time like deadline for the sign up, or like?
No. So a lot of people ask me all the time, like, can I still join? You can always join. This academy is not like an online curriculum where you have only like a time slot to apply and then do it, and then you have to finish things like in this and this period. It's up to yourself. I can just promise you, if you do not know anything about startup communities or ecosystems and you do the reading, you know enough that you can talk to people. If you are certified, we have you on our radar and we can start interacting with you and introducing you to the right people. And the good thing is you can do that based on your own time. If you want to do that in 6 months, do it in 6 months. If you want to do it in 1 week, do it in 1 week. We are here, we are ready, and we try to make it very flexible for people. We also try to make it very low tech heavy. That's why it's still on Airtable, because we didn't want it to start coding before we have a proof of concept ourselves that people are interested in this. So I hope you still see it helpful that it's all on Airtable, because it's open both in China and outside of China. It's very simple to use, and we do not need coding. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So a bit about our team. We are super international ourselves. I'm from Germany. Sabrina is from Algeria. Fang is from Singapore. Jorge is from Mexico. Leonardo from Italy. Fabian from France. Jagi from Mongolia. Emil also from Singapore. All of us except for Fang have a background in community building, even though like Fang has experience with Slush, so she has the experience, but all the rest of us, I think, have background in at least Startup Grind, some in Startup Weekend. So we are a super international team. We are everywhere right now thanks to the virus. Everybody's kind of home except for me. I'm still trapped in Beijing. And you see some regional focuses. So later on, when we have more interest in certain areas, these people will take care of you. So if you're coming from Brazil, Jorge will probably be the person being responsible for you. If you're from Europe or Australia, I will take care of you. Probably in the beginning, I will take mostly care of most of the cases. But yeah, just that you see the faces. You can also find us on LinkedIn. And yeah, all great people. Fabienne, the CTO, is currently building a platform as we speak, so that this data insights that we were talking about and the concept of this donut chart will be available on a platform. Where this will go at one point is a mixture of a Dianping or a TripAdvisor plus a LinkedIn. So you as a community organization can go to your city, you can type in IoT or whatever, and you will find out who is the incubator or investor that's relevant in your city. And again, this should be like free available. That's what we are working on right now. It takes a bit of time, but Fabienne also mentioned that we are now like going online quite soon. Looking forward to that. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. So we still have time for like 1 or 2 questions. If you do not have any, we can also shift that to online. Any feedback, any questions?
I had a question. So right now I'm based in China, but maybe in another 6 months or so, I might be moving to Europe. So would that be something ideal from your perspective as someone who is in FLair, like as the founder, like, because you're focusing everything on one particular ecosystem, right? So I've been in Chengdu for about 6 years. I know almost everyone here and everything, but because of my work, I might have to move to Europe very soon. So of course I'll be asking for your help like that, but then me as someone who's trying to become a community builder, would that be ideal to start in one community and then migrate to another?
Yeah, this is actually what we're looking for, because we know that community builders usually do not stick very long to one ecosystem. So they will stay 3, 4, 5 years in one place, then they move on. So the difference between the ecosystem ambassador passive and ecosystem lead ambassador for us was that once you migrate to another city and you want to actively still continue as an ambassador, we help you then to migrate also to other cities. So if you're going to Berlin, you are still certified as a city ambassador for Chengdu because you know your stuff. But we also will add on then a certificate for a new city. So if you're entering Berlin, we will still give you a pre-map Berlin. You can tap into our resources. You can learn about all of this. And then ideally on LinkedIn or anything else, you can say, now additionally to Chengdu ecosystem ambassador, you're a Berlin ecosystem ambassador. And from this, people know that you're somebody who knows the ecosystem, you are approachable, you can help people with guiding them in the right direction. And that's where we want to go. So we are very much looking forward for people who are actually doing this, and some of us are tapping into multiple ecosystems as we speak. Fang, for example, she's currently focusing on Kuala Lumpur herself and Ho Chi Minh, but in August and September, she's moving to New York, and I hope that she will take care of New York there as well. So yes, we're looking for these kind of international experiences as well.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? There is something here. We can do the test level 0 after 1 month of every week meet. Also, that question I do not get right. Well, you only do that once. So the basic ecosystem certification, you do that once. And later on, if you want to become a city ambassador or anything, you just start the next level and then you get certified. And then you also have access to the other ecosystem ambassadors. You can network with them and learn quicker about things. So you do not have to take that all the time. These calls are more for getting to know our theory, what we are planning to do. You can also ask us questions. But in general, just stick to the guidelines on Airtable and you will find everything there. And only one time you have to do this application. All right. Then I would say that's all from my side. Thank you all for joining today. If you should have any follow-up questions, please reach out to me or my team. They are all in the group. I hope to speak to more of you soon. So I hope to see a couple of more certification applications being filled out. And yeah, let us know if you need any help, and looking forward to working more closer with you. Thank you all for joining, and have a good weekend. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.